My brothers and sisters, what is going on, everybody? Still sermon in the house Sunday evening with another video. Currently recording this at halftime between the Bills and the Packers. So I figured I'd come on here and record my Monday morning video now. So second week in a row I have a Monday morning video up for the Pittsburgh Steelers as we drop it to the Philadelphia Eagles in humiliating fashion, 35-13. As always, do me a favor, like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Instagram and on Twitter. Links are posted in the box below. Something that I want to touch up on here is just why I think overall the main reason that this franchise is what it is right now. And it's not like this is the only year that they've done this recently. It's actually been happening for quite a while now. It's just been covered up by a Hall of Fame quarterback and the reigning defensive player of the year now in TJ Watt. But if you ask me, while everyone else, points fingers at, Matt Canada and Mike Tomlin and the O-line and the quarterback situation and this and that, those are all factual. But if you ask me, I think the biggest reason that is a direct cause for most of it, it has to do with ownership. Because you can't be this complacent and this stubborn for this long if you're Mike Tomlin or Omar Khan or Kevin Colbert, or you're constantly missing draft picks overall. You can't be complacent this long unless it's ownership. And that's what the Pittsburgh Steelers are going through right now. This is a reflection of ownership, and it just kind of seems like that the culture of this franchise, it died along with Dan Rooney back in 2017, because when Dan Rooney passed on, it kind of seemed the culture died with him. Dan Rooney was the perfect owner for this franchise. He was a guy who did not care about his bottom line. He was a guy that put his management and his staff in check. And he was a guy that represented the city of Pittsburgh and this logo and franchise as a whole. Hardworking, doesn't take any crap, and will fight to any means necessary to bring home a Vince Lombardi trophy. Never made sure anything was going on in the locker room. Never made sure that people were acting out. And he was well respected. And his son, Artie Jr., he does, even though his last name is Rooney, he doesn't feel like a Rooney. And what I mean by that is that he just kind of seems like he's just there, despite him inheriting this franchise from his father and from his grandfather, Art Sr., back in 1933. That's what I mean by Art doesn't really feel like a Rooney. Because he's so out of touch with reality for this franchise. He thinks his way of running this franchise is the best way, and it's become obsolete. It's become out of date. And I said this in Steel Twins' stream on Sunday. There's a difference between something that's old school and out of date. Old school is something like the Kansas City Chiefs offense with Andy Reid. It may not be, Andy Reid's scheme may not be the most popular way, and it may not be, the way to go in today's league, but you can always go back to it, and you can teach an old dog new tricks. Hence why in 2017 they drafted Patrick Mahomes, and then they traded Alex Smith over to Washington, made Mahomes their starter, and Kansas City all of a sudden has the best offense in the league. You look at what Andy Reid is doing. I mean, it's nothing spectacular with what he's doing, but he has the right quarterback that makes his system work. You know, you look at Bill Belichick over in New England. He's been their head coach for 22 years now. Everyone praises Bill Belichick for what he's doing over there in New England. But really, again, it's nothing revolutionary. It's just something that's been overlooked by a lot of coaches in past years, and Bill Belichick is just finding a way to make it work. So that's old school. It's not popular, it's not sexy, but you can go back to it. Outdated is something that you never want to go back to. And that's what the Pittsburgh Steelers are right now. We're outdated with how we run this franchise. These in-house promotions, even though I do like Omar Khan as GM, because I think he's done a phenomenal job with contracts, and he's done a phenomenal job with not making sure that we go over the cap. But here's the thing about Omar Khan. In order to be a good GM, you have to be able to scout players, and you have to be able to scout talent, and you have to draft well. And that's why let's be honest with ourselves, okay? This is going to be Mike Tomlin's first losing season. We already lost 6 games. We're 3 losses away from a guaranteed losing season. So this is going to be Mike Tomlin's first losing season. All right? Let's just face it. But this is why this year, if we draft top 5, because we're probably going to be a top 10 pick in spring. We might even be in the top 3 depending on how the rest of the season goes. But I fully anticipate us to be a top 10 draft pick in spring. This is why this draft is very important for Omar Khan. He has to be able to scout these youngins in college. He has to be able to make some moves in free agency. He has to be able to make some valuable trades. And he has to be able to push all the right buttons and extend these guys to their proper contracts. Promoting Terrell Austin, I was not on board with it when it first happened. And so far, it's only looking like it's proven my point. I like Brian Flores coming here, but Brian Flores has been quiet so far. Giving Mike Tomlin an extension, not a popular move with a lot of the fans right now. And then, of course, Matt Canada is in his second year as offensive coordinator with us. And knowing how complacent Artie Jr. is, he ain't going to fire him. Because that's what the Rooneys do. They don't fire head coaches. It's an outdated system of running your franchise. I get that a lot of outsiders who are not Steeler fans like to say, well, the Rooneys are classy, because they don't fire head coaches. The Rooneys are classy for the Rooney Rule because they like to give minorities chances. Here's the thing. If someone on this coaching staff or someone in the front office isn't doing their job, then they need to go. At that point, don't you think that you're being a fan of the person themselves instead of being a fan of what's best for the team? If Mike Tomlin's being mediocre at something, stop giving him chances. You see Matt Canada's offensive play calling is horrendous this year. Fire him. I understand maybe, you want to give him another chance, but fire the guy, go outside the organization, and hire from outside there. But I know what the Rooneys I know what Art's going to do. Mike Sullivan, and not the Mike Sullivan from the Pens. That'd be freaking awesome if it was Mike Sullivan from the Pens, but it's Mike Sullivan, the Steelers quarterbacks coach. Mike Sullivan, you're the new OC. It's going to be the same offense as Matt Canada. And you know what the common denominator is between Matt Canada, Mike Sullivan, Randy Fichtner, and even Todd Haley? You want to know what all those OCs have in common? Their head coach was Mike Tomlin. And while Mike Tomlin has been a big problem this year for the Pittsburgh Steelers, the direct cause of why we are where we are is because of Art Jr. Like I said in my postgame, I want you to name me one player from this organization in the past 5 years, outside TJ Watt, that the Steelers have drafted, scouted, seen do well at the combine, made a regular starter, and have become a star in this league. And not even a star. Just a really good player. It's hard to find one, isn't it? It's because there pretty much isn't any. And like I said, Juju Smith-Schuster, he's probably the closest one to it, but he's lighting it up in Kansas City right now. You might say it's George Pickens right now, but George Pickens is a rookie. You might say Pat Freiermuth. Freiermuth is still too early. He's in his second year. How do we know he doesn't fall off? Najee Harris so far, he's looking like a bust. Devin Bush, the less said about him, the better. Everyone on the offensive line isn't doing their job. Let's see, who else? Chase Claypool, he's just very meh. He had a great rookie year, but when he's not being put in the slot, he's completely useless, and he's been incredibly underwhelming since his rookie year. Let's see, who else? Cam Sutton doesn't really look like a lockdown corner. Akello Witherspoon, even though we didn't draft him, we got him in free agency. He's looking like Artie Burns out there. Like, seriously, last time I checked, Artie Burns was in Chicago getting roasted. Yeah. It's sad that I have to compare Akello Witherspoon to Artie Burns. They both wore the same number, 25, too. Maybe 25 is another cursed number for the Steelers. I don't know. You might say Minkah Fitzpatrick is the best one, but we didn't draft Minkah. If we didn't make that trade to Miami, where we sent several futures down there to Miami to get Minkah Fitzpatrick, who, by the way, probably had the worst game of his career as a Steeler on Sunday, then this secondary would be getting toasted even more. Terrell Edmonds, very Jekyll and Hyde. Very boomer bust. I can't say that. Can't say that he's become a good player because he's very inconsistent. Inconsistent play gets you nowhere. Didn't draft Larry Ogunjobi. Didn't draft Miles Jack. Cam Hayward is starting to show his age a little bit, but he was drafted back in 2010. You see what I mean? There is not one player on this team that we have drafted in the last 5 years, other than TJ Watt, that has made significant impacts with this team. Significant headlines across the league. And it's a reflection of not only the front office, it's a reflection of ownership. When I have to sit down here and watch this team just get dragged by an undefeated team, a popular pick to win the Super Bowl right now in the Philadelphia Eagles, a franchise that has not beaten the Eagles in Philadelphia in what's now going to be at least 59 years. Because the next time we go to Philly, it'll be 2024. When all that happens, it's a reflection of ownership. And I know that people go like, well, the Rooneys have, they've made the Steelers into one of the most prolific franchises in the league. People forget that Art Sr. ran the franchise like a country club when it was first founded back in 1933. The Steelers didn't win their first playoff game until 1972. We used to be a terrible franchise. What was it that the Chief used to say? SOS, same old Steelers. And that's what Artie Jr. is doing right now. SOS, same old Steelers. And the sad part is, all this is so easily fixable. It is so easily fixable. All he has to do is step outside his comfort zone and start getting people and personnel outside the organization. When you are 2-6, you have only 3 playoff wins in the last decade since losing Super Bowl 45. And when your team right now needs a massive rebuild, go outside the organization. Terrell Austin ain't cutting it. Matt Canada surely ain't cutting it. Mike Tomlin's starting to get exposed. Brian Flores hasn't made much of an impact, and we went outside the organization right there to get him, but he hasn't made much of an impact. Start making some changes, Art. Because right now, you are not doing your father well at all. You just aren't. And I am not the only Steeler fan that's sitting down here and saying this. There are a lot of Steeler fans out there right now that are criticizing Art Jr. and it is 100% warranted. Like I said, this guy doesn't really feel like a true Rooney. He just feels like a guy, like kind of like a puppet. He really does. Feels like a puppet just up there walking around the stands or up in the press box or whatever the heck he's doing. Just acting like that he owns the team. Oh, just because I wear a suit and a tie and just because I have billions of dollars, that means I know what I'm doing. No, you don't know what you're doing, sir. I am asking you, Art Jr. I understand we're going through a rebuild. I understand it's going to take a little bit of time for some of these players to develop, but we haven't seen any development yet. Start doing the right thing and start really running this organization, this proud organization, in the right way. This proud and prolific organization that has established a winning culture for the better part of the last 50 years. A franchise that won 4 Super Bowls in the 70s, back-to-back titles twice. Teams that went 9-7 back in 1989 and got off to as bad of a start as you can imagine, upsetting the heavily favored Houston Oilers in the playoffs. A team that went into Denver in 1984, they upset John Elway's Denver Broncos back in 1984. A team that hired a Pittsburgh native and Bill Cowher and turned a burnt-out team around, leading them to 6 straight playoff appearances in the 90s. A franchise that took a chance on Big Ben after a down year in 2003, and he gave us 18 Hall of Fame seasons in Pittsburgh. Do the right thing, Art, because the fans are starting to chirp in your ear a little bit, and I am definitely one of them. It's pretty fitting, too, that the Pittsburgh Steelers are named the Steelers, because the steel industry has been on a steady decline for decades now. And the Steelers have been on a steady decline quite, like I said at the beginning of the video, this isn't just the first year of the decline. This decline has been happening for a while now. And it's been covered up by a Hall of Fame quarterback and one of the best defensive players in the game, the reigning defensive player of the year. That's what it's been covered up by. Start doing your job, Art. Please, Mr. Rooney, start doing your job. And that's really all I got to say. Because, if there's one thing that I can really hope that Art Jr. starts doing, is that he does one of the following. He says to Omar Khan, okay, Omar, you're going to be in charge of all the transactions and you're going to be in charge of all the financial flexibility. I'm just going to take care of the business aspect. Or he gets a new GM. And he tells him the same thing. That is outside the organization. Basically, Art just needs to handle the business side of the league, and he needs to handle the business aspect of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Because like I said, the way that he's doing things is outdated, and it doesn't fly in today's league. As much as I would love for it to be 1978, guess what? Things have changed. Things have changed. And that's all I got to say. Steel Sermon, checking on out for the night. May God be with you all.